It is just about 6 a.m. right now, which means it's time for my flagship comparison part 2. And I decided to do it right about now because I just woke up, couldn't sleep anymore anyways, and it is not warm enough yet for my camera to overheat because the roots are the same as on the flagship comparison part 1 already. This video will be long, it will be rough, it will be very detailed, and if you watch it completely and you still don't know which ones to take, then there will be of course the comments, but I definitely hope I will give you all the possible information. It will be very long and maybe even more detailed than the last time in a few segments, but it will be more just about the separate differences. And I just have to point the same out as I did on the last time. These are all so close together, and when I say something is better than the other, then there are sometimes really marginal differences between all of those, because I can easily recommend all of them. They are all flagships after all. Of course, there are price differences and all. Some have some drawbacks and some have some other ones, but all are impressive. Now, why I chose the following ones is just because, and I will get into that in just a few seconds. For now, of course, the HTC U11. I didn't actually review that one yet. Then from the last time already, kind of also already the Xiaomi Mi 6, the Xperia XZ Premium, and the OnePlus 5. Before you ask yourself why aren't some other ones here in, the Honor 9, for example, is not, even though it's quite recent, because I just think it's one level below all of these. Then something like the Nubia Z17 is not here just because I didn't get the Play Store running and wouldn't have been fair. Now, the other ones I already reviewed, something like the S8, the G6, or maybe something like the Huawei P10 Plus. So you can use the Xiaomi Mi 6 as a reference because that one was already in the first one. But this one is more the 5.5 inch comparison. The last time it was more different form factors and so on. And yes, I know the Xiaomi is a little bit smaller, but that's the reference point, and also just because it's still one of my most favorite phones to date. So that's why these are here. Of course, if you want information on some others, leave that in the comments, but I want to cover these because definitely I think these are comparable. These are all great, and that's why I would say let's just jump into the first thing here, the design. My first place, and I will always start with that one and then go down to fourth, is the Xiaomi Mi 6. Not just because it's the smallest one and I just prefer smaller phones, just because I think with the glass back and with all the nice transitions, it just feels so incredibly smooth and comfortable in the hand. Ergonomics are amazing, everything feels just right. It also has the IR blaster, everything is just so nice on this phone. The fingerprint reader maybe isn't quite the fastest anymore by now anymore. I just have to say this because something like the OnePlus is faster, something like the U11 maybe is faster, but I don't like the vibration so much. So I still like the fingerprint reader a lot. As you can see here, it works still absolutely top notch. And just in overall, with the smoothness, with the nice transition here, and overall, it is just a beauty to look at it. And build wise, it's absolutely top notch. Nothing really creaks. A little bit of bottle wiggling, but this is absolutely normal. Now, my second place goes to the OnePlus 5. And for that reason, that is for a 5.5 inch, this phone feels actually very compact, which is super nice to see. Some people think that the metal is very slippery. For me, for some reason, it is not. But I never had an issue, for example, with glass back phones anyways. So what I'm not the biggest fan of are the button placements, because I think this is a little bit too high, but that's subjective. But I don't like the volume rocker on this side. But still, this doesn't really change the fact that it feels great in the hand. The build quality, in my opinion, is super solid. The fingerprint reader here is the best of this test one, and the second best one in general, because this is so fast, so responsive, so nice, and only something like a Honor 9 is actually better. So still totally love this. I still like the nice transition. It feels great in the hand. Has a very similar design like the Xiaomi Mi 6. But this, in my opinion, is just the best in-hand feel on a 5.5 inch. Now, the third place goes to the HTC U11, and pretty much mostly just because it's thicker, for example, than the OnePlus 5. As you can see, it's just thicker and a little bit bigger, a little bit bulkier. But I have to give it to that. It feels absolutely amazing. This still feels a little bit hollow, but it's fine because it looks great, of course, not so much with the fingerprints. But overall, super nice and round, and feels actually way more manageable than I would have thought, because it after all feels a little bit bulky. It feels actually very similar, like let's say a little bit thicker OnePlus 5, but in terms of build quality, super nice. The buttons have a nice meaty click. They are positioned just about right. We have a very extreme actually curve on the glass, which makes it feel great. But I have to say, in terms of build quality, the glass actually scratches up a little bit easier. At least it did on my review, but since they have all kind of like Gorilla Glass 5 by now, or 4, it is very similar, but this is just something to be pointed out. The fingerprint reader, as you can see, is actually a little bit small. It works super reliable, it vibrates, which is something that I don't like so much, but I can't really complain about it. It's fast, it's very reliable, It is though a little bit on the lower side, same as for the buttons, so these are a little bit harder for me to reach, but it doesn't change the fact that things like the camera and so on. So I definitely have to say I like the design. It could have been smaller because the battery size and so on, in my opinion, could have ended up with a smaller phone, but it doesn't change the fact that this is still an absolutely nice phone. Now the Sony Xperia Z5 is, the XZ Premium is kind of on the last place for some obvious reasons. Huge bezels. It is just by far, as you can see here, the biggest phone in this comparison, even though it's also just 5.5 inches. Buttons feel a little bit dead, at least on my unit. They don't really offer any tactile feedback. Fingerprint reader works very good, but yesterday I had a lot of trouble during my review to actually get it working, so I turned it off because the fingerprint reader, which is actually not even available in the US, for example, with sweaty fingers had quite some issues. The rest though, I have to say this phone feels great in the hand, and yes, I said in my review that I'm not quite sure what it is. I knew it was Gorilla Glass 5, but as on all Gorilla Glass 5 phones, I think it feels a little bit hollow and it feels a little bit on the cheaper side. So I'm not the biggest fan of Gorilla Glass 5, especially since it scratches quite easily. Of course, the bulky design will make one-hand usability the hardest of these all ones, but it definitely feels great, and the build quality is though not that great because mine cracks and creaks a little bit. Some say it's not the case for them and that their back feels like glass, but this really comes down to personal preference. But I guess it after all in this test is fair to be called out as the last place. Now in terms of the display, the first place here, and this is kind of depends to how you see it, but I will get to why I will say the HTC U11 is the first place. Because, let me quickly get into that. It just offers a 1440p display out of the box, which is super nice and sharp, well calibrated. The viewing angles are top notch. It is also nice and bright. So this just is out of the box the best display. Now, I will give the Sony the second place, but only because it runs 1080p out of the box, which just is maybe sharp as the OnePlus 5. So not the very sharpest one out there. But, and this is what you are seeing already now, it can be run in 4K native, and I made a tutorial how to get that done, and then it would be actually the first place, because with that increased sharpness it definitely makes up for a lot. Then it's a super crisp display. By the way, all are set to 120 lux, so it should be on the same par, but then the resolution is so much better, and I personally don't see much of a drawback, because yes, there are some issues. Some say the dialer doesn't work, which for me is the case. Mine doesn't crash for some reason. Some scaling issues could be there, but with this you can actually use YouTube in 4K. Like I said, natively it would be kind of maybe place 2 or maybe actually place 3, because I then would prefer the Mi 6, but with 4K it would be actually place number 1, because it is after all a very nice screen. With 480 lux though, not the very brightest one. Now the third place in some way could be the second place, already goes to the Xiaomi Mi 6, because it is still an absolutely lovely display, because it is nice and sharp. Viewing angles are nice, and I definitely like the calibration a lot. It is also super bright with 680 lux. Viewing angles are top, and it is an absolutely top display. Yes, it's just 1080p, but on 5.15 inches, this is no issue at all. Text is crisp, text is sharp, and I definitely like it a lot. Now the fourth place, which definitely could already be seen kind of, you could maybe see this as a drawback or a draw between the Xiaomi Mi 6, because this display has the issue that yes, it's 1080p AMOLED, and therefore it sometimes in text can feel a little bit fuzzy. There's also of course the jello scrolling bug that definitely could put it in fourth place, because that is something that a lot of people don't like, and it's maybe not the sharpest one, maybe not the most impressive one, but I still like the display so much because of its vibrancy. Colors are so great due to AMOLED, the blacks are great. So no, it really depends on how you want to see. I would definitely say out of the box the U11 just is the best display. With 4K, the Sony. But if you see things a little bit different, then the Xiaomi 6 could be a little bit high up on top. If not, and if you prefer maybe AMOLED, it comes down to what would be the last place for you. But I just have to point this out once again. These are all still very nice screens. And I know most people maybe won't give this one a lot of credit because it's 1080p AMOLED. Many say it's not a flagship level display, but it's still, especially in normal use, once you get used to it not being super crazy sharp, it won't disappoint you either. So believe me, all of these displays are nice. I would put, just in terms of raw quality, these two more up high on top. This one with a little bit of that's some separation, but still totally lovely. Now, sound. What I will do now is I give you a demo of all the four ones, and then I will judge the loudness and the overall quality. So let's just start off with the HTC U11. Okay, now let's move on to the Sony. Now the Xiaomi Mi6. And let's enter the demo with the OnePlus 5. Okay, let's start with the volume section. The loudest one would be the OnePlus 5. It is just noticeably the loudest one, but I'm just talking about sheer volume. Then the HTC U11, followed by the Xiaomi Mi6, and with a little bit of a bigger margin, actually, the not that loud Sony Xperia XZ Premium. But now I won't go into just quality, but overall. So it is a proper mix between quality and volume. And then the HTC U11 wins, because it's with not that big of a margin, the second loudest one, but the overall quality, due to having also this dual speaker arrangement, sounds overall the best. The second place, if you prefer quality over volume, would be the Xiaomi 6, because it is maybe not super loud, but not that loud. It's definitely loud enough. But it also has dual speaker, and it has a high quality dual speaker system. So that's the second place. Now the third place goes to the OnePlus 5, because it is the loudest one, and it still sounds decent if you have the same kind of volumes. Now the reason, even though you should expect the front-facing stereo speakers of the Sony to be the best, which they are maybe not even in terms of quality, because in terms of quality they are still, let's say, a little bit higher on top, but it is the maximum volume, because especially on my workplace, when I watch sometimes YouTube videos and I want to hear voices, this is not always loud enough. So you could just decide, if you want more quality, maybe go for something like the Sony. But generally, like I said, HTC U11 is the best, and I would already give the second place to the Xiaomi Mi 6, just because quality and volume are good enough. If it's more volume, then you could put the Sony up higher on top. Headphone jack quality, I guess this is no surprise. The HTC wins, followed by these already kind of being very similar. So the Xiaomi Mi 6 and the OnePlus 5, not really making a difference. Maybe you could put this one a little bit higher up on top, because it has the headphone jack. Here you will need the adapter. Both have equalizer settings and so on, which kind of makes them similar. But like I said, second place for the OnePlus 5, Xiaomi 6. But actually, quality-wise, very, very close. Like I said in my review, I am a little bit disappointed by the quality of the headphone jack of the Sony Xperia XZ. Also not loud enough. I'm not quite sure why, because the Xperia X Compact was way better here. But it is time for the performance, and since I have the winner already here in my hand, this, and I've said this also, it's actually the title of my review, is the fastest Android phone at the moment. Just keep one thing in mind, that this is running in 4K native, which I showed in my tutorial. So in 1080p, the performance is actually a tad little better, but it doesn't really make up for it, because I would definitely go for the not really even significantly or even noticeable difference in terms of performance, because I can get the better resolution. Because this resolution, if you can maybe see this in 4K, wow, this is so crisp, and still, as you can see, buttery smooth. And I'm not quite sure how Sony did this, because I know they tweaked the scrolling a little bit. They make it kind of seem even lighter and more fluid, and that's why this is just the best phone. And just to show you one thing, this is what I'm talking about. These crazy fast transitions is something that you simply won't see on any other device, and it is a monster. It is the best phone, not by a big margin, but still. Second place I will already give to the HTC U11, and we can quickly already actually show you, just so you know what I was talking about, because if we do the same thing here, let's use Palaver. You can just see how much, okay, I didn't actually hit that proper one. So let's just try it. I didn't actually get it once again. So let's try it. So as you can see, the animations are just way faster for some reason, way more snappy on the Sony. And of course, I totally failed at that demo. But this one gets actually the second place because it is very, very similar to the HTC U11, but not kind of as fluid as lightweight, not as snappy, but super nice in what it has, something really nice going for it. I think the scrolling is very smoothened out, so it's kind of like filtered. It feels so nice, and you don't see this here, but it is an absolute top performer. It's fluid, it's fast, it's snappy, lots and lots of RAM, and it just makes it a great appearance. Now, the third place is actually a little bit harder for me to judge because I would give it to, and actually maybe put it even sometimes a little bit higher for the OnePlus 5 if it wouldn't be for a few issues like the following. Because in apps like Phoenix, as you can see here, runs crazy smooth. And here the experience is maybe pretty much the very best one. But then there are just situations like, for example, the browser. I think the browser just runs a little bit jittery. And every app that uses Chrome's engine. So this is where I just have to deduct a few points because it would have been place number 3 because in just a few apps like, for example, Palaber, it's also something you can't really actually see. As you can see, it's smooth, but it just has these some kind of minor jitteriness issues because they got already better because on 4.51, which was the very first version, it actually was even more so noticeable. I think it got way better now, and it is overall a very lightweight and nice transition because with all of these transitions, it's a very snappy device with 6 gigs. It is top. And it can be one of the very best ones, but it just has a few situations like, for example, the browser, which is something I still guess a lot of people use, where it falls a little bit short. Now, the Xiaomi Mi 6 doesn't have this issue because it is also very smooth. It doesn't seem quite as blur-free like the U11 and the Sony Xperia XZ, but just as nice in terms of scrolling because it's also super nice and smooth. As you can see here, still totally delivers. But it feels a little bit more blurry, just not quite as filtered out. The one thing that I also want to point out, for example, also my standard Twitter app is Flamingo, and that one also just has this little bit of jitteriness still. It is something that really doesn't bother me in normal use. I got used to that, I have to say that, but it is noticeable. So if I would have to actually choose what I want, even though the OnePlus 5 can perform smoother and better, this overall just delivers the better experience because you don't have any apps that don't run well, so it's more consistent. So I would say these two. So this is the fastest on 1080p. On 4K they are very, very close, so I will put a little bit of a margin in between here, then actually very close, just a little bit more blurry. And this one being a little bit of an oddity, it could just as well be here with updates and so on. But as for right now, just because of the inconsistencies in Chrome and Flamingo and a few apps, it's the 4th place. But all, I just have to say this once again, all are so good that it doesn't really matter. All will absolutely suffice you. And these are still the top of the food chain, absolutely. Now, battery life. Place number 1 goes for me to the Xiaomi Mi 6 for 2 reasons. First of all, it charges the fastest with 1 hour and 20, but it also holds the longest. So I would say roughly 6.5 hours on mobile data and about 9 hours plus on Wi-Fi, which is super impressive. And I have to actually point out one thing. In my review, I said the standby rate was high, but with the latest update, it actually improved from about 1% per hour to kind of like sometimes even 0.5% an hour, which makes it way better now. The second place goes to the HTC U11, which is surprising because it has the bigger screen and the smaller battery. But even here, I got about 5.5 hours to 6 hours on mobile data with about 7 hours on Wi-Fi. So the difference here isn't all that big in terms of Wi-Fi having a bit an efficiency, but it has a very, very good standby drain. Third place, actually not that far off, is the OnePlus 5, because there I got, I would say, on average 5.5 hours of screen on time on Wi-Fi and on mobile data, and about 7 hours plus on Wi-Fi. So it still is, yeah, absolutely showing its skills. And the standby drain is really good. Now, the standby drain on the Sony Xperia is also absolutely top, and this actually makes it a very good device over a longer period of time, but the use just isn't all that good. I also forget to charging times. I actually did not check the HTC U11. I guess it should take about 1.5 hours. Very similar like the HTC Ultra. This charges in about 1 hour and 22. doesn't heat up. That's the advantage of dash charge, but still, I wouldn't say the difference is big compared to the Xiaomi Mi6. This charges quite long just because it doesn't come with the quick charger out of the box. Because I had 2040, someone in the comments told me that his friend's ones charges to 80% in 25 minutes, which I think is absolutely not possible even with the quick charger, because I've never seen any phone charging that quick. So for me, about 2.5 hours. But the screen on time is, I would say, about 4.5 to 5 hours on mobile data, about 6, and I think 5.5 to 6 hours it was, if I'm not wrong, on Wi-Fi. So I would say all of them are good enough. This one falls a little bit behind because all the other ones I would say are like kind of great, where this one is maybe just really good, but all should get you through a day. Standby range is good on all, so yeah. Okay, next big part would be the software. Here, for me, the clear winner is the OnePlus 5. And for a lot of reasons, actually. Because what I love so much, actually, which I did not expect to actually be such a big point, are the screen-off gestures, especially for something like the flashlight, which I use so many times. Of course, you could also launch apps and so on. But it just starts there, because like I said already in my review, what I like is that you can set different kind of actions for all the buttons, but I actually think that a lot of people misjudge that, because as you can see here, you have a long press action and a double tap action for all of them. So for example, double tap for me is this to switch between the apps. Double tap here turns the screen off, double tap here opens the notification shade, and this in my opinion makes usability the key. And we maybe don't have some fancy features, but what we have here are things that actually make usability so much better. So I would definitely say this usability is key. Of course, we also have still something like a, let's say, light theming engine, because we have the dark mode that you can see here, also the bright mode and accent colors. So it's a very minimalistic theming engine, but it totally gets the job done. I also like the stock launcher, or the kind of pixel launcher with stock Android look, but themed and advanced. And this is just my absolute favorite, because very close to a custom ROM software. Now, the second place, this is a little bit harder to judge, because for me it actually kind of already is the Xiaomi Mi 6, because it offers a lot of smaller things that I like. You can also rearrange the buttons, but you don't have nearly the options here, because this is actually a little bit sad to see, because what we have here in terms of actions is just maybe like Google search and so on. You can pretty much forget it. Of course, you get dual instance, but you have a few nice small things. I definitely like the theming engine a lot, which is something that you don't see here, but that theming engine makes it very, very appealing to me. Of course, what you won't maybe see all the great, because something that I don't like is the way the recent apps get shown. We also don't have double tap for the last app, so it actually falls short, but I just like the simplicity of it. I still like it. Of course, you will have to maybe flash something also, so keep that in mind. So for most people, I would say the second place is the HTC U11, because it is kind of running a stock Android, but definitely noticeably themed with a theming engine that for some reason actually didn't do so much as it did on the Ultra. Maybe I did something wrong this time, but of course, quite a stock Android look. You don't get too much extra features, but the updates come usually quite nicely along. But that is what it is. Now, the only reason why I'm giving the Sony the last place is just because I think nothing has changed in terms of software for the last few years. The launcher still looks pretty much the same. It is still keeping a very stock Android look, which is nice, but we don't get any sort of extra features. A few enhancements in terms of the display, like for example here, the color gamut and contrast options, white balance, and some video enhancements. And the same goes also for the sound. But otherwise, it is pretty much just kind of a little bit boring stock Android. Definitely one thing it has going for it are the updates, because you will get the updates for the longest time here and the fastest in my opinion. So if that is very important, if you want stock Android clean look, it actually might be the first place. Like I said, this is very subjective. I will give it to the OnePlus 5. Then it really comes down to what you want. More stock Android with a few additions, or I like just MIUI because of the theming engine, the slightly nicer, for example, stock apps that are themed just a little bit more appealing to me. So this either way, and this could be the number one if you like stock Android with fast updates, but just because it's a little bit too limited in terms of settings, it is not for me. I'm seeing we are at 24 minutes, and that's why I would say let's go into the camera, and I will quickly run through everyone, just so I'm not going to show too much, but I want to get into a few things. Now, overall camera quality, as you can see, I still like the Mi 6 a lot, because it produces clean, sharp pictures. And for many people, it will actually fall apart, because they just don't say it is a flagship level camera. But if I see those pictures, I can't really say anything bad about it. Yeah, landscape pictures, I have to say, they fall a little bit apart, because here some details definitely get lost. But overall, the quality allows to deliver. Autofocus works well. Shutter times are great. So just going quickly through it, yeah. Especially selfies look quite good. Absolutely sharp in most cases. Absolutely no problem. But yeah, it is what it is. Actually, as you can see here, totally gets the job done. Absolutely. Video, just real quick. Of course, low light, actually, I would say it's really good. I like it. It's not that bad. But I don't want to take too much time here because then it would just explode, make this video explode in terms of length. Now 4K video, I have to say, it is very smooth. There is some little bit of artifacting going on, but what I like is the autofocus because that one is actually very seamless, as you can see here. Works super nice and subtle, but still very fast. And the actual quality is, as you can see here, still nice. It kind of loses a little bit of details, but yeah, that's what it is. And that's why I would already actually say, let's get to the next one here. Let's cover the OnePlus 5. Selfies, I have to say, definitely super nice. They look good, and I've definitely said already, almost great cam because sharp in most cases. You have to be a little bit further away though, because as you can see, you're super close. It doesn't work, but even indoors, I definitely think it absolutely delivers. And you can see, of course, a little bit more in my actual review. That was actually a live review. But yeah, I just have to give it to that. The front-facing cam definitely no strand. Low light quality, like I said, is just about quite good, a little bit over good. So yeah, here things could be better. But the main camera, I have to say, yes, it's maybe not the sharpest one, it's maybe not the most impressive one, but I think it totally gets the job done. I would say in some aspects, the Xiaomi Mi6 is actually sharper, but not in all of them. But I like the overall experience with the fast shutter times, and the app works quite clean. So I let you decide which you think is on which place. I will tell you what I think a little bit later on, but yeah, I don't see it needing to be bashed. It's not the very best cam, but I have to say I like it after all. The experience is still very nice. Now 4K video, yeah, I like it. The 4K video, I have to say that, because it is very smooth, and it has a very good autofocus, but like you see, artifacting and the focus isn't always spot on. Now 1080p 60 looks actually quality-wise still quite okay, but it has this weird autofocus that you will see just in about a second, because it's just to kind of jumping too much in, which is just not subtle enough. This is something where I'm not the biggest fan of. Now XZ Premium. This is the number one when it comes to selfies. This just delivers. It has autofocus and it is spot on. The autofocus sometimes needs a little bit time, but believe me, these are the very best selfie pictures and also video, as you can see, that you can get. Super sharp, detailed, great colors, smooth, top. The autofocus sometimes, if it loses track of your face, gets a little bit confused, as you can see here. But once, the quality is so nice. Low light, I would say, is also maybe just quite good, because here, as you can see, it falls a little bit apart. And the shutter times are still the reason with the post-processing, which is still longer than on most other phones, even not maybe by so much anymore, the quality is top, and it is an almost great cam because nice colors, details, and all that. So yeah, let's quickly run through that, not to make it too long. 4K video, I would say, is actually maybe the best of all these, because yes, a little bit of artifacting is going on in the sun, as you can see here, and the 4K and the autofocus is maybe perfect, because it is quite smooth, but sometimes just doesn't quite get it. I was asked about 1080p. I have to say this is actually maybe the best 1080p shooter, because it almost doesn't fall behind. Now, this is the highly praised best camera from everyone, the HTC U11. I personally don't see this, and let me show you why. First of all, selfies. They are not always that sharp. As you can see here, I'm quite far away, and this is not in focus. Also here, so I'm never really impressed. And what you can also see here, my white balance of my face is over the top all the time. As you can see here I'm quite yellow, here I'm quite cold, here I'm red. So I don't think the white balance is the proper one at all. It can be sharp, as you can see here. Yes, it can, but in so many instances it just doesn't happen. Here not, and once again, the white balance is just off. And this is actually my main complaint about this camera, and I will say this in my review, the white balance. Because it is just all over the place, which is just so weird. Yeah, I don't really know. Otherwise, it can definitely be a very good one. As you can see here, video is good, not on a Sony level good, but it gets the job done. A little bit of artifacting is going on, and yeah, once again, the white balance. But overall, it is not enough to be a huge complaint. But I'm just not quite as impressed as everyone else by this camera, and I'm not quite sure. Low light is supposed to be the best, and yes, this definitely is the best low light cam of all of these four. but I still don't see it to be better like something, for example, like the Samsung Galaxy S8. Now outside, here everyone is praising it, and as you can see here, yes, it can absolutely produce detailed shots and great with the OIS. Absolutely knows to deliver, and you can get great pictures, but once again, it is the white balance and the exposure that is so often. You can see this here, for example. Almost the same shot twice, and the white balance is completely different. And this just happens so many times. And for example, this picture doesn't look natural at all because it should more look like this. So yeah, this is just wrong. And the exposure is also off, which is actually should be here the case. As you can see here, I'm just going a little bit higher, and this, for example, now only this minor little difference makes it completely underexposed. For example, also this, way too pale. These leaves don't look like this. Once again here, as you can see, exposure. So exposure and white balance are, in my opinion, definitely not great, because I've not seen such a behavior on any other cam. Yes, if you get it right, especially if you use the manual mode, it can be a great shooter, and it can maybe then be the best shooter. But I can't get over the fact of how weak the exposure is. Now 4K video, as you can also see, quite some artifacting is going on. As you can see here, yeah, this is not amazing in terms of artifacting. So the bitrate should be higher or anything else. The autofocus, as you can see here, works reliable. Absolutely fine. This is nice, fast and smooth and subtle. The quality itself is also absolutely nice because it maintains a high level of detail, as you can see here now. But yeah, I'll leave you the judge of that, because I would like to switch back, because I covered it pretty much all. So I'm not sure if I should call out a placement here or rating. Okay, but let's try to do it quickly after all. So in terms of the selfie cam, absolutely the Sony. Then I would already put the OnePlus, maybe somewhere in between, also the U11 and then the Xiaomi Mi6. Not making a huge difference here in between. Low light cam, yes, the U11 here is the best. Then I would say maybe very, very close all the rest of them. I won't really choose a specific one here. Now for the main cam, I would say actually between all of these, the Sony is the best one. Then actually, yes, I know it should be the U11, but I just have to take off so many points because of the exposure and the white balance, and you have seen this. Of course, I'm a noob. I'm not a pro cameraman, but I guess most average users that want a flagship phone don't want to bother with manual mode. They just want great pictures, and I'm not always getting those. I guess with perfect lighting conditions and so on, yes, maybe, and with the great low light cam, yeah. But I would actually say the OnePlus 5 here works out better, and the Xiaomi 6 is also very close to that. So let's come to that. Video quality, Sony. Then actually already very close like the rest, maybe the U11, then the OnePlus, not a huge difference between it then and the Xiaomi 6. So even if the Xiaomi 6 sounds like the weakest one here, I still think it is good enough for everyone. Also the OnePlus 5. Yeah, the Sony here in this case I would actually say stands out a little bit. The U11 should be impressive, but it just didn't impress me for some reason. I don't know. Now, what should we say? Should I make a quick rundown? I don't think it's necessary, but the video will be long anyway, so let's just quickly get through it. So this is kind of the summary of just the ratings, and maybe they could actually differ because I didn't write it down and I will just do it out of my head. So design, place number 1, the Xiaomi Mi 6. It just feels incredible, it's just amazing. Place number 2, the OnePlus 5, because it feels very similar to the Xiaomi. It is very grippy for a 5.5 inch, very thin, very usable, superb. Then the HTC U11 feels like a little bit of a bigger OnePlus 5. Great quality, all top, yeah. And the last place goes to the quite big, Sony. Now the display, like I said, the HTC U11 here wins out of the box. Would be the first place. The Sony would be the first place if you use the 4K mod. Without that, it would be actually maybe just the third place, because then I would prefer the Xiaomi Mi 6. And the OnePlus 5 is kind of the last place, but it actually makes up for that with a great vibrancy of the screen. The sharpness isn't the very best one, but it still knows to deliver, and even that one is not a deal breaker for me. Now, speakers, I already said it, the HTC U11 overall wins because it's very loud and it still sounds very good. Then, maybe not quite as loud, but still in terms of quality just about as good is the Xiaomi 6. Then the OnePlus 5, because it sounds still decent, actually let's say still good, but it is the loudest one. The Sony just gets the 4th place because it is just not as loud, but the quality of the front facing would be good. Headphone jack, HTC U11, then the OnePlus 5, the Xiaomi Mi 6. Actually, those could be on par, but I said the OnePlus 5 has the headphone jack. You will need the adapter for the Mi 6, and the Sony just once again not loud enough. Performance-wise, the Sony wins. And if in 1080p or 4K, it doesn't really matter, because even then it would be on par with the U11, which would be the 2nd place. Absolutely knows to deliver. The 3rd place goes to the Xiaomi Mi 6, because that one is just a little bit more motion blurry in terms of the other ones. And the last place, and I said why, is just because not all apps run that well. Of course, you have the jello bug that personally doesn't bother me. And in some cases, it's actually kind of the smoothest one, because the AMOLED displays usually have to have the scrolling that is perceived as being smoother. But things like Flamingo, things like all Chrome based kind of apps just have a little bit of scrolling jitter. If that is not an issue for you, it could be way higher up on top, but I just have to see this objective and I just have to deduct a few points. Personally, for me, it still is good enough, and it makes up a lot for those important apps running really well, and the overall experience is great, and this is what it is. Battery life, like I said, Xiaomi Mi 6, 1st place, absolutely. Followed actually not that far off with the U11. Then also quite close to the U11, but still a little bit weaker, the OnePlus 5, and then the Sony Xperia, which falls a little bit more behind that. Software, really very subjective personal preference. I give it absolutely with a quite big margin to the OnePlus 5, because it offers so many useful smaller additions, features like settings for the buttons and so on. Then you have to decide. Personally, I will give it to the Xiaomi 6. I just like the UI look by now a little bit more, but in terms of just pure functionality, it would be the HTC U11, and then the Sony that is just a little bit too boring by now. Camera, I've talked so much, I just want to not cover this anymore, because it is also very subjective. You check the sample to check my reviews, and then you decide, because this would take up just way more time. So let me quickly cover every single one and tell you what I think in terms of overall rating. And this is super subjective, because I would say actually something like the HTC U11, if price isn't a matter, is kind of the most balanced overall phone that you can get. And I think my camera is starting to act up already, but it has to deliver a few more minutes of screen time, because it seems that it go darker. But my personal subjective rating, I'm still very, very torn apart which ones of these I like more. Because what the Xiaomi 6 has going for is the amazing design, beautiful display, great speaker, top performance, the best battery life, a camera that is still well enough, and it is still kind of my favorite phone. If I would have no phone and if I would have to buy one, I'm still not kind of quite decided between the OnePlus 5, because what that one has going for it is the great in and feel for a 5.5 inch, the display that just has this great vibrancy, the speaker that does maybe sound super nice but super loud. Performance overall is still nice, battery life is surprisingly actually better than expected. The software, this is what makes this phone so appealing to me, because the small little additions like all the double tap features, the long pressing, and the ambient display, and all these kind of additions, along with easy custom ROM support, make it so appealing to me with a camera that is easily good enough. So I still can't quite decide between those two. Like I said, for most general users, I guess this would be the perfect balance, because all qualities are super high. It has the best display, it feels great in the hand, even though maybe not super small. And yes, my camera is acting up. The battery life is actually very good, which I did not expect. Okay, I did it because I knew it already from the HTC Ultra, but with the small battery, but the high resolution big display, it knows to deliver. The camera is a little bit of a flip-flop for me, because most people say it's the very best one, and it could be the case, but from what I've seen, from what I've showed you, yeah, it is possibly definitely still great after all, especially if you use manual mode. So very well balanced phone. My review will give you a little bit more information, and I'm not saying that this is the last place or something like that. It really comes down to subjectiveness, but for me it's a little bit too big. The display is monster, the performance is monster, and the camera is actually pretty much also kind of the best one here overall in this test, with the battery life, which is very important for me, falling off. So if you kind of now pick your most important categories and take which one is where, like I said, everything is very close, then this could be actually way more higher on top on your list. Priced though, these are okay. In the US, this is like 600, where it's 750 still here, same as the one here in Germany. And then these get just way more appealing, because this is about 500 usually officially, but since I got from GearBest, With the code, I think it's OnePlus 4G, you can get it for about 440 euros, which is like $450 or so. And the Xiaomi 6 is already available under 500. But I have to point out the thing that now it uses already an international ROM, which shouldn't be the issue, but it doesn't have band 20 and it could be an issue in few countries. So I know this is not a decisive conclusion, but I also don't want to point out and say this is the best, this is the best, this is the best, because this is very subjective. I just wanted to kind of give you a more objective part in the detailed part. The rest is what I just personally think. And with all of these information, you can do now what you want, leaving this video at 40 minutes and stopping off before the camera acts up way more, so I'm sorry about that. But I hope I give you all the information, and once again, I got it very closely nailed to 40 hours with a lot of information packed in. I hope this helps you, and I would say that these phones are pretty much my most favorite phones at the moment of all the flagship, because I would prefer pretty much all of them over something like an S8 or even a G6. The G6, of course, has also a lot of nice things going for it, like the great value, especially now these days, an amazing camera, battery life was very good, the performance was solid, weaker than these though. The display was just a little bit off-putting for me with a little bit of a flat profile, just a little bit weird colors but a good sharpness. And it was for me, and this is very, very subjective, the design, this was just too bulky and a little bit unwieldy. But I know it will be way more high up on top. But like I said, watch both of these, watch whatever you want. Leave me any questions down below, because if I have not covered anything, I don't know. But this is where you can leave me the comment to let me know. And otherwise, if you like this video, thumbs up. And if you want to see more of these big comparisons, maybe even a live one, let me know that in the comments and with a like. And yes, the camera is acting up, and I will close and shut this video off. And I wish you a nice day. Until next time. Bye.